Excellent. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I'm delighted to have been invited along this morning to share some PR secrets with you. And trust me, they're not rocket science, but they are very simple secrets and tips that will allow you, hopefully, to achieve some positive PR for you and for your business. Without further ado, a little bit about me. Now, I've chosen to kind of reveal my age a bit here by showing you a baby photo. And there is a reason for that, trust me. The reason is I want you to remember that Sarah Brockwell of sarahBee Marketing was the only presenter that introduced herself with a baby photo. And that's an example of using PR. That's public relations, that's me engaging, putting an image or something out there that's going to make you remember me. So hopefully this will have done the trick. And there you can see me in my pram. I couldn't tell you how old I was at that point in time, but I looked a very happy and content baby. That's enough about my baby stories, but seriously now, my name is Sarah Brockwell and I work very closely with the Best Growth Hub, and indeed I am a great fan of the work and the support that they offer to Essex SMEs. I personally have benefited from their support since I founded my company back in 2010. And personally, I was media trained along the way by the BBC and the Press Association. And this has enabled me to have numerous opportunities to be a guest presenter, particularly on BBC Essex, where I'm frequently asked to present on business and entrepreneur related topics, and I absolutely love doing that. And since founding the company almost 11 years ago, I've worked with just over 1,000 entrepreneurs, and those entrepreneurs span Essex and indeed across East Anglia and into London and Hertfordshire as well. I absolutely love business. I'm passionate about business. So far, we've seen quite a bit of success in terms of our clients being featured on various news platforms, on TV platforms, including BBC News, Sky News, and CNBC, just to name a few. And then we've also had many, many clients featured on radio. And that could be on BBC Essex, where we frequently have clients featured for various positive reasons. Obviously, BBC Essex is not the only BBC station, so we've had clients featured on BBC Three Counties recently. We had a Queen's Award for Enterprise winner interviewed on BBC Three Counties. We have clients featured on BBC Suffolk and also 5 Live. And these are interviews as opposed to actual advertising. Obviously, the BBC doesn't carry advertising anyway, but you can advertise on various commercial radio stations. The clients that have been featured in national newspapers the list is absolutely huge, but I've just listed here the kind of top titles that you might be familiar with, where we've had clients featured in the Daily Mail, the Express, the Times, the Sunday Times, the Metro, and the Daily Telegraph, and so on. Trade magazines, trade press are huge for our clients, so we've had numerous editorial features in trade magazines, as well as local newspapers and local magazines as well. And as well as winning 6 business awards for sarahBee Marketing, we've also been fortunate enough to see our clients win some major industry and business awards as well, including the Queen's Award for Enterprise. Personally, an award that I'm very proud of is the title of Essex Businesswoman of the Year that I was awarded in 2013. And just to let you know, for those of you that I've not engaged yet with, that I am lucky enough to be project managing the Novo Awards. And the Novo Awards are powered by the Best Growth Hub, and they are a groundbreaking awards programme for Essex businesses, and they celebrate innovation and integrity across the Essex business horizon. They're free to enter. They launched this morning. So if you go to novooawards.co.uk, you can nominate your business free of charge and read more about the fantastic sponsors that we have on board, as well as the judges. Let's now come on to the main topic of this presentation. So we're looking at the power of PR. Why is PR important? So headlines like this are great, and some of you may be old enough like me to actually remember this headline, which was from 1986, and this was an infamous headline, Freddie Starr ate my hamster, light-hearted. So PR is more than about creating headlines. If you're familiar with the phrase Marcoms actually means communicating messages through marketing, and Marcoms and PR are closely linked. So let's consider what messages you might want to communicate to augment your marketing activity, so to put your brand in the spotlight. What might you want to communicate? What might your PR message be? Have a think for a second. What is it that you want to tell the world about? Here are just a few examples. You might be launching something. You might be launching your business, or you might be launching a new product or a new service. You might be making some kind of a finance-related announcement. You may have signed a major deal, for example, or you may have taken part in a merger or an acquisition. You may have received some seed funding that you want to shout about. You might want to communicate that you've won something. So, for example, if you enter a business award and you're successful and you are awarded some kind of accreditation, then that's absolutely spot on for communicating that via PR. So tell the world about your win, be proud of it. You might actually be looking at PR to communicate some kind of a sales promotion. You might even want to use PR if you are undertaking a rebrand. So you're changing your brand, for example. You might then want to use PR to actually communicate that. And finally, you might want to use PR, or you might need to use PR to manage some kind of a crisis. And I really hope that none of you ever find yourself in that situation. But my company specialises in crisis management and have lots of experience in working with clients that have unfortunately suffered some detrimental or negative PR, and we've helped them actually overcome that and turn that around. So just to summarise this slide then, PR is a tool for managing your messaging. And I've just given you 6 examples here of what your messaging might be. And PR is a really important component of your marketing plan. And I really hope you all have a marketing plan. I'll leave that for you to ponder on. Who cares then? So if you're going to be investing in PR, who's likely to care? So bearing in mind that you've got a specific reason for investing in PR, like those 6 that I've just shown you, it's important then to really understand who cares, who is your target audience. So who are you trying to communicate? Customers, definitely. Yes, you want to to keep your customers informed. You want to engage them with positive and powerful PR messaging. Customers are important, but equally important are, for example, stakeholders in your business or even your supply chain. Very important for your supply chain and your stakeholders to be kept informed of positive PR. Those of you that invest in social media, and I'm sure most of you do, PR can be an extremely powerful tool for keeping your social media followers engaged and indeed raising your profile so that you achieve even more social media followers. For example, a few years ago, we undertook a PR campaign for a Chelmsford-based company that wanted to increase its profile on Twitter. So we undertook some tweets where we tagged in the official number 10 Downing Street Twitter account, and this was at the time that David Cameron was Prime Minister, and those tweets actually got liked and shared by the official number 10 Twitter account, and my client saw their Twitter followers go from a couple of hundred to a couple of 100,000. Obviously, because of the exposure, when number 10 retweeted the tweet, it engaged 2.6 million followers at the time. So PR, hugely important to social media, as is PR important to your staff. It's important to staff engagement. Reading positive, powerful messaging about your company gives your staff a sense of pride, and it will also help you attract high quality, high profile staff to make your company a destination for high quality staff because they're reading positive PR about your company. Maybe you're using PR to attract a global audience, and believe me, it's not that difficult. If you get your PR messaging right, you can certainly engage global media, and we have numerous examples where we've helped clients achieve PR coverage across in America, in Asia, in Australia, and in the Middle East. Last but not least, your investors may be tapped into any positive PR that you generate, or potential investors may be tapped into positive PR. So can you start to see the importance of having a PR strategy? Once you've actually determined who cares what you've got to say, then you're going to need to consider what type of media those people are tapped into. If you think back to the previous slide, we had different examples of different target audiences, and they will, by definition, be tapped into different media platforms. They'll watch different TV stations, listen to different radio channels, and so on. You can certainly start to influence different platforms with your PR messaging. And listing here, for example, television. It's not that difficult if you have a powerful and a convincing PR message to get some coverage on television. You might want to be looking at influencing printed media to getting column inches, getting coverage in a newspaper or a specific magazine. You might be targeting radio because you've decided that the majority of your target audience listen to a certain radio station. Digital media, and from digital media I'm also including their social media. So digital media would be any online coverage, any social media coverage, and so on. Also, PR can be used very cleverly to influence word of mouth, what people are saying about your brand. So getting it right on these different platforms will certainly help you promote a positive PR message, which inevitably will increase your brand equity. And at this point, I just want to reiterate the difference between PR and paid advertising. So you can certainly pay to advertise on any of these media, radio, TV, digital, printed media, apart from word of mouth. You can pay to advertise on them, but PR can be so much more powerful than paid advertising. And advertising has its place, don't get me wrong, but PR can be so much more powerful. So how are you going to get this positive PR that's going to increase your brand equity? The first thing you might like to do is you might like to write a press release. And if after this presentation you go along, after EXI, you go along to sarahBeemarketing.com, you'll find a free press release template that you can download that explains how to compose an official press release for your business. So you could go down the route of being interviewed by the media, and that interview could be on radio and it could be on television. It could be a virtual interview, for example. You could invest your PR efforts in a PR stunt, and there are numerous PR stunts. I hasten to add that the Freddie Star Ate My Hamster was in fact a PR stunt. It didn't actually happen, but look, it got headline coverage. So PR stunts could include, for example, Guinness World Record attempts, and we've worked with numbers of clients who have undertaken a Guinness World Record attempt. So editorial is where you receive coverage that is written by a journalist or an editor. So it's not your words, it's their interpretation of your press release, of your words, for example. And that's why it's so important to have a professionally written press release when you're trying to engage the media for editorial coverage. You could invest in an advertorial, and an advertorial is also known as an advertisement feature, which is a combination of advert and editorial coverage in printed media. And finally, you might say, okay, I'm going to outsource my PR to a PR agency, and that's certainly an option that you have. But hang on then, we are constantly bombarded with lots of stories and messages in the media every day across all of those media platforms. So when then is the best time to tell your story with PR? And believe me, there is a best time. Firstly, and foremost, I would like to say that the best time to release your PR is when it's relevant. So what do I mean by that? I mean that there is something going on that's linked to your story at the moment. So the obvious example of this is anything COVID related, but it could be a trend that's going on that's pertinent to your industry that your target audience will know about. So for example, it could be a new regulation that you want to talk about, or a new industry trend. As I said previously, you may have a crisis on your hands that you need PR to overcome, and crisis management needs a very high level of PR skills. As I said, my company specialises in PR crises management, and I'm often interviewed to talk to the media about PR crises. And the last example of that was I did an interview talking about the debacle of Harry and Meghan breaking away and the Oprah interview and the royal family. So a really good time to release some PR is to coincide with an awareness day or an awareness week or month. So national awareness events are really, really good for PR because the media are already tapped into them. So for example, May this month is National Clean Air Month. And this week, many of you might know, is Mental Health Awareness Week. And actually today is National Eat What You Want Day. So I'll certainly be celebrating that later with some ice cream. Fridays, generally not a good day to circulate news. If you're circulating news via email on a Friday, there is a danger that it's going to get lost in an inbox over the weekend. Most local newspapers are printed on Wednesdays, so Tuesday mornings are a really good time to catch the editor's attention by sending out your press release. But obviously daily newspapers have different deadlines, and online media pretty much does its own thing. So a really good tip is to approach your target, if you're targeting a trade magazine, approach the editor for a list of forward features. So this is the editorial calendar. This is what they plan to feature each month or each quarter for the rest of the year. And you can time your PR to coincide with this so that it's relevant to what's going on in that magazine at the time. And then finally, and I really hate to admit this, that if you can collaborate with some kind of celebrity or endorsement or something that's going on at the time with a celebrity, then you would stand a better chance of getting media coverage. And I hate the aspect, but celebrity does in fact sell. So we're coming to the end of the session now, and I just want to really summarise with my recommendations for what you need to do. So if you're all ready now to go off and produce some PR, doing this will ensure that you actually get it right. And the first thing I recommend you do is set yourself some SMART goals with what you want to achieve with your PR. And for those of you that are not familiar, SMART, the acronym, standing for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based goals. You need to determine how much money you're going to spend on your PR. So for example, if you're going to be undertaking a PR stunt, it will inevitably cost some money. So have a think about what your budget might be for PR. And then sit down and work out your list of target media. So I've illustrated here some trade press. Obviously, you might be tapped into different type of media, but certainly you should be creating a list of target media. And then correlate what you plan to do in terms of PR with your marketing plan. And hopefully, as I said earlier, you have an up-to-date marketing plan. So make sure that your PR is timed to correlate and it's calibrated with your marketing plan. Now you're ready to actually put yourself out there in front of the media. You're ready to start contacting journalists, contacting editors, circulating your press release, even speaking to bloggers and influencers who may all also be prepared to give you positive PR coverage. And if you're nervous about this, and I appreciate not everybody is really tapped into presenting and speaking to the media, so if you're nervous about this, then I certainly recommend that you invest in some media training. And if that's something that you're interested in, that's also an area that my company can actually help you with. Finally then, you've determined what your story is going to be. You know, what's your story all about, and you're communicating that to the media. Make sure within your story you have some type of a call to action. So when the reader is reading the PR coverage, is there an instruction in that PR coverage that tells them what you want the reader to do, i.e. call you, visit your website, look at your YouTube channel, for example? If you can possibly limit your messaging in your PR story to 3 key messages, that makes it a lot simpler for the reader to engage with. And then a real tried and tested tip is to set up some Google alerts in the name of your company and your own personal name as well, so that you can be alerted of real-time coverage of your PR story, real-time online coverage, obviously. So don't forget to tell your staff if you know that there's going to be some kind of PR coverage somewhere. You know, you might have an upcoming interview on BBC Essex, for example. Make sure you tell your staff and ask them to circulate that to their contacts and their social media platforms. And get ready to collect your clippings if it's printed clippings that you're going to be achieving. So maybe allocate one staff member to read through the trade press and keep an eye in the media, in the printed media, to actually clip the coverage that you've achieved. Don't forget to tell your customers, as long as it's positive PR. Be proud. Tell your customers, hey, we're going to be on BBC Essex next week, or we've got a feature article in the Grocer magazine, for example. And do the same for your social media followers. And finally, have a look at your key performance indicators. So do maybe some Google Analytics. Have a look at the impact of that PR on the hits to your website and your web traffic. Have a look at the impact on your social media engagement. But it's really important, if you've invested in PR, to do some performance indicating. So look at the effect of that PR. And if you do this all right, you could get some really beneficial PR coverage. And here are just a few clippings that we've worked with clients recently who've achieved some fantastic PR, some global PR. But it's really important, just finally, I'll leave you on the note that it's really important to understand that PR is never guaranteed. Just because you think you've got a great story doesn't mean that the media will agree. So I'm going to open the floor now to questions, and if any of you wanted to contact me, these are my contact details. If you visit sarahBeemarketing.com, there are some freebies, some guides, a press release template, for example, that you can download free of charge. So I will open up now to some questions.